Welcome back to Politics by Faith. End of wokeness? Question mark? But I don't want that question mark. I just wanted a declarative statement one day soon. Professor William Jacobson is here, Cornell University law professor, founder of the website. Please make it part of your daily reading, Legal Insurrection, and also the founder of the Equal Protection Project. Professor, how are you, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Glad you're here. I'm discouraged. Help me with this. I'm discouraged on the legal fight against wokeness. Should I be more encouraged, or how should I be feeling about the status of it?
Well, I think it depends what your expectations are. If anybody expected this battle to be won in 6 months or with eight, executive orders, they were unrealistic. It's something we're in a state now that has been multiple decades in the making. And hopefully it won't take multiple more decades to unwind it. But I think there's been a lot of progress. I think there was progress prior to Trump 2.0. I think that's one of the reasons he was elected, not the only reason, but one of them was a backlash. And I think that a lot of what he's done in the first 6 months has been very impactful, but nobody should have the expectation that, by January 1 next year, this is all over.
Yeah, maybe before we go any further, we should define wokeness. How do you define it?
Well, there's many different ways, but the one that I use, it's the exploitation of left-wing social justice concepts to virtue signal as a means of exerting political control. That's how I would define it. Now, there are pieces to that. They manifest themselves in different ways, whether it's the curriculum in college, whether it's training sessions, whether it's various ideologies, but that is the overwhelming concept to me. I think it's also fair to say that, just like the famous comment by a Supreme Court justice about what is obscenity is, you know it when you see it. Okay? And so we all know it when we see it, but it's basically exploiting their own social justice concepts as a means of exerting political control.
Okay. A lot of different ways you can go there. So the last guest we had on, and kind of my first instinct is to see wokeness in the culture when it comes to like aesthetics or beauty and like our history and like tearing down statues and replacing them with ugly things, stuff like that's kind of like my instinct, just kind of go there and see it. Where do you go first when you see the wokeness? You're like, that's where I see it the clearest, and that's where I can contribute the most to stopping it.
Well, with me, it's mostly higher education related and education more generally, because to me, what has happened in higher education is essentially the mother's milk of so many of our societal problems. The concepts that 20 years ago people would have thought is completely insane are now accepted concepts, various gender identity concepts, things like that. And so to me, the core cultural battle is taking place in education. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said higher education, but it's now in K through 12. There has been a concerted effort, including by teachers' unions, to push this stuff into kindergarten and elementary school. So that's where the cultural fight is. It manifests itself in other ways. A lot of the people who learned those things in college now are in corporations, now are in government. But to me, it's an issue of the education system.
Do you remember the first time you saw it? Whatever it was, 20 years ago or whatever, the first time you were like, whoa, what? Because I'm sure you've been confronted with bad ideas for a long time. But what was the first thing you look back on? You're like, oh, wait, that was actually woke.
Yeah, I think I would go back even further. I think that when I first recognized the racialization of education, and nobody used the term woke back then, was when I was in Harvard Law School in the early 1980s. These buildings of coalitions of color for political purposes, particularly against Israel and against Jews. That's when I first noticed it. I only recognized that in hindsight. I didn't really understand what was going on at the time, but I'd say you'd probably go back to the late 70s, early 80s and the racialization of education, which then became critical race theory, which then became diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it was a process over 20 to 30 years. That's when I first noticed it with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah, that checks out with Bork's book, Slouching Towards Gomorrah. If I recall correctly, there's a part in there where he talks about how you just cannot criticize, you could not, back in the day, criticize a black history professor. And a black history professor could say, the most absurd, like, just chronologically doesn't even make any sense claim, and you could not question it in any way.
I think we see that in current politics. I mean, the quickest way to get called racist is to criticize a black politician over policy. How many people were called racist for opposing Obamacare, healthcare policy? But because it was Obama, you were called racist. And that's really politically, for me, the first time I experienced it and saw it. Because prior to starting my website in 2008, I wasn't political at all. I obviously could read and hear, but I didn't participate. It was only once I started participating in the 2009, 10, 11 timeframe that I recognized the exploitation of racial issues as a means of exerting power. Not because anything you said about Obamacare was racist, but because that's how they exerted control. And I think it was the third blog post I had in October 2008, if I'm remembering the title correctly. It was the exploitation of racial politics as a means of control, or words to that effect. That was the third thing I wrote at the website in 2008. And I said how poisonous it was and how it would really rip apart the country. And everything I said then was true. So it's really in the context of Obama and his politics that it got forced onto everybody.
Well, and now look at you. And now look at legal insurrection. Look where you all are now. Okay, so we've identified the threat or the problem. We've lived it. We see it. Everyone gets it. It's waning in ways, or at least the obviousness of it, perhaps, the blatantness of it. But it's still hiding there. So what do we do? What do we replace it with? Or what do we lift up so that regular people would never even think of going the woke direction? What do we lift up instead?
I think you have to lift up the rights of the individual, the dignity of the individual, stop classifying people by identity group, treat an individual student not as a black student, a white student, a Hispanic student, an Asian student, but as a student who is entitled to be treated fairly without regard to race or ethnicity. That has to become the overriding goal and the overriding ethos of our educational system. It's what the affirmative action case, Students for Fair Admissions, pointed out, that a lot of the problems that we have stem from gross racial negative stereotypes, which lead to things like affirmative action. And so that's really the answer. We have to change the culture. We have to get ourselves back to a culture which mirrors the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution Equal Protection Clause, which is that each individual is entitled to equal protection of the laws. That's why we named our project the Equal Protection Project, because that's what we're seeking to uphold, is the dignity of the individual and the worth of the individual without regard to group identities. It's going to be tough because, at least on college campuses, group identity is everything. It's what drives everything on college campuses. It drives admissions, it drives hiring, it drives just about everything. And so the steps that the Trump administration is taking to get that out of the education system, to get it out of the grant funding, to get it, out of the hiring process, that's critical. It's going to take a number of years. I don't know if it can be accomplished in the remaining 3.5 years of his term. If there is a successor Republican who continues those policies, I think it's very likely, if this push to get it out of our system, to get wokeness out of the system, continues for 6, 8, 10 years, I think it can be successful. Serious progress can be made in 2 to 3 years, but that battle can't be won in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, about 30 seconds. Your data set is probably mostly Cornell University, which is great. But everything else you've seen, do you see college kids maybe starting to push back against the wokeness that they had to live through, whether it's Black Lives Matter or COVID or all these other things? Are you starting to see some of that in the hearts and minds of young people?
I think that's happening. I think people recognize it. I think students are afraid to speak up about it. But I think the whole concept, and I think virtually every survey shows this, the whole concept of treating people differently based on skin color is abhorrent to most Americans. Most Americans, including non-white Americans, don't want that. But that's what's being forced. But there's a huge price to pay on a college campus from speaking up. There's a huge price to pay on a college campus for even attending an event where that is challenged. So I think there is a backlash building, but I don't think it's enough right now, but I think it's definitely building, but they're not going to give it up. The DEI industrial complex is like survivors from a shipwreck clinging to a lifeboat, hoping for help to arrive. And I think they think that help is going to arrive in the next election. We'll see if it does or it doesn't.
Great point. Professor William Jacobson, Cornell University. Go check out Legal Insurrection every single day and the Equal Protection Project as well. Professor, good to talk to you, sir. Thank you.
Take care.
Welcome back to our special, The End of Wokeness. I want to define wokeness. Our two wonderful guests did. Let me give my crack at it. Wokeness, from the left's perspective, is the awakening of your understanding, your own understanding of how oppressed you are, or how much of an oppressor you are. It is meant to either, if you're the oppressor, to make you feel bad, or if you're the oppressed, to make you feel bitter. It's how the devil works. Close to the truth, but not quite. Right? The devil doesn't start off with, blatant lies. He starts off with subtle sorts of deceptions and half-truths to turn you away from God over time. And even the word woke, what a beautiful trick from Satan. The idea of being awake has biblical allusions to it. All right, so first of all, Jesus told his disciples to stay awake while he went and prayed. They couldn't. There's a couple different commands in the Bible to be awake, stay alert, be sober-minded. Romans 13:11 says, besides this, you know the time that the hour has come for you to wake from sleep, right? There's a lot of waking references in the Bible, and just in general. I once was lost, now I'm found. Was blind, now I see. Was asleep, now I'm awake. But awake to what? Not the truth, not to gratitude, not to virtue, not to the Bible. If only the woke movement was a gospel movement. Right, that would have been great. But alas, it has not been. Maybe it can be. But wokeness at its core is about destruction and desecration and making sacred things profane. We talked in the opening segment a lot about art. Art used to call us higher, used to make us look up, literally look up. But art lately has been to destroy, to make profane. Right? Like here's rap music. This is good music. This is good movies. Right? Just broken cultures pushing all this stuff, and it's pushing all of us down in the mud, and it's preventing us from climbing out of it. This is the French artist Duchamp. His most famous work of art was a urinal. Here's an interview of him back in 1968.
What you were also attempting to do, as I understand it, was to devalue the art as an object simply by saying, if I say it's a work of art, that makes it a work of art.
Yeah, but the word work of art, you see, is not so important for me. I don't care about the word art because it's been so, discredited and so forth.
But you in fact contributed to the discrediting, didn't you? Quite deliberately.
Deliberately, yes. So I really want to get rid of it. Because the way many people today have done away with religion.
What more proof do I need to share? It's about tearing you down. It's about tearing God down. Art, though, and beauty and goodness in every way is about lifting up your soul. There's the now famous quote from Jeremy Wayne Tate. He tweets this from time to time. He says, modern man is in a terrible predicament. He is helplessly enamored with the beauty of what the old world built, yet despises the beliefs that inspired them to build it. You can think like, geez, you talk a lot about art and architecture and all this stuff, like enough of this art talk about it. It's not just art, it's everything. It's everything we build all the time. Everything. It's whatever you're building that came from something. It came from beliefs that inspired you to build. They want to destroy everything. They want to destroy the beautiful things that have been built, and they want to destroy the ideas that built them. I love this quote too. I think this is the best Sydney Sweeney analysis I've heard. It's from Caroline Downey. She said, the left hates Sydney Sweeney because her popularity is symbolic of their failure, the left's failure, to reprogram young men into aesthetic relativism. I love that, aesthetic relativism, right? So one of the progressive ideas is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There's no such thing as truth, they say, and there's no such thing as beauty. So they've been trying to push this aesthetic relativism, like, oh, here's this obese woman in yoga pants, like she's beautiful too, right? She's beautiful too. And people are like, no, stop, I'm done with this. Objective beauty exists, just like truth exists. Now, at the risk of making this too political to end our special today, Pew came out with a new survey, and they're comparing 2023 to 2015, not that big of a difference, but the radical swing among one particular group of people. Right, so the people who haven't swung, if you're listening to this on the podcast, the group of people who haven't swung that much are men and women over the age of 50. Right, like a little swing maybe to the right. Women over 65, a little swing, 2 points to the left. But like no change really. I mean, men over 65, 6 points. Well, they're 6 points. Men over 65, oh yeah, men over 65 are 6 points to the right. Excuse me, to the left, Democrats. But still, like 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 points, okay. Women 30 to 49, 3 points to the left to Democrats. Okay, all right. But check this out. Women 18 to 29, just in the last 2 years, women 18 to 29, 14 points Republican. That's the swing. That's how much they've gained. The Republican Party has gained young women 18 to 29, 14 points. Men 30 to 49, Republicans have gained 15 points. But check this one out. Men 18 to 29 years old, young men, Republicans, 2 years, have gained 44 points. That is a rebuke of wokeism. And I love this analysis from Robert Sterling. He says the left has no idea the monster they've created with Gen Z. They have no idea because these Gen Z people, they spent their formative years navigating this massive social experiment and bombarded with wokeness. But the experiment was COVID lockdowns and the DEI struggle sessions and pronouns and microaggressions and land acknowledgements and intersectional social justice. And that demographic, Robert Sterling says, just snapped. They're like, we're out. We're no longer afraid of you. You can call me whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And their political stances today is a total reaction to what the culture had forced upon them on their formative years. Toxic masculinity, all of that. Then they're out. They lived this crucible, and they are now going to be the most right-wing generation I've ever seen. And hopefully these young men will soon march through the institutions. The left and everything they've done these last few years, we're not quite there yet, but hopefully it will backfire on them totally. Right now, sort of what the professor was saying, we're on the downswing of it, but it's still there. But if we can do this right, then there could be a proper backfiring to the left, and we can be in such a better place. If we channel that fire for good. Young men in particular, but young women too, have a deep aversion, hatred, detestation of the left, of wokeness. Great. Let's use that for good. If that can be funneled in the right direction towards what is good, beautiful, and true, then what a righteous thing this, what a righteous movement it will be. This can be one of the most important parts of the American Golden Age. Politics by Faith is my podcast. We take the news of the day, we run it through the Bible, tell Bible stories, read some scripture. It's all there. It's all in there. Everything's in the Bible. Everything happening now is in the Bible. Go check out my podcast, Politics by Faith, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Mike Slater, The First TV. Spread the word.